At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 434 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing really well.
Yeah, you look really well.
Looking good, feeling good.
There you go.
Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout-outs. We had Elsa Queen Psycho.
Oh, all hail the queen.
Glenda Allen Pratt.
Well, hello, Glenda. Tell Chris I said hi.
Cindy Blankenship.
What's going on, Cindy?
Effie Anastasiadis.
Anastasiadis. It sounds kind of maybe a Greek.
Okay, you want to go with that?
Yeah.
I was thinking Russian, but
could be Greek-Russian.
Okay, how about that? Rhonda Harton.
What's going on, Harton?
Mark Taylor.
Hey, Mark.
Tara Brown.
There's good old Tara.
Stephanie Magura.
Hey, Stephanie.
And last but not least, Steph Lee.
Well, hey, Steph.
Yeah, we appreciate the new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Andrea L. Williams.
Well, hey, Andrea.
So we appreciate that long-term support as well.
Love it.
We have a brand new episode out right now on True Crime All the Time, where we're talking about the Night Stalker, but not Richard Ramirez. This is the Night Stalker in the UK.
That's right.
Who was one of the most prolific and depraved sex attackers in British history.
And if you want to know the name, you have to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, we're trying something a little different, right? We are not naming the podcast or giving the name away right up front. We're leaving a little mystery there on True Crime All the Time.
That's how we do it.
All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am.
We're talking about the death of Amanda Antoni. Lee Antoni returned home after spending the weekend with family and found his wife, Amanda, dead at the bottom of their basement stairs. Amanda's death was immediately declared suspicious and investigated as a homicide, but investigators faced a lack of evidence and leads. So this has kind of a staircase type vibe to it.
It does.
You have a wife found dead at the bottom of a staircase. You have the husband who becomes, a suspect in the eyes of police.
Makes me nervous about my staircase.
Well, to be honest with you, at your age, you need to be careful. Staircases, stairs in general,
Any unlevel floor.
Any surfaces that are not completely level. Amanda Antoni was 31 years old at the time of her death. She was originally from Carstairs, Alberta. At 2 months old, Amanda was fostered by the Hogg family. They adopted her at 14 months, and she grew up with her older brothers, Alan and Daryl. Amanda's family remembered her as a prankster with a kind heart. She loved cats and dogs and took in stray animals. She also loved people.
I bet she loved animals more, though.
It wouldn't surprise me. A lot of people do. And a lot of people, they find it very tough to just leave a stray animal alone.
Yeah.
Not to try to help it, to bring it home. A lot of times they end up, keeping.
I think your one daughter's kind of like that.
Yes, absolutely. She loves animals so much. Amanda's brother, Daryl Hogg, recalled how during the winters, she filled backpacks with supplies and drove around to give them out to homeless people. So again, Gibbs, a lot of times when we're talking about the victim in an unsolved case, obviously there's going to be a lot of glowing things said about them, but it also seems like more often than not, they are genuinely really good people.
Yeah.
Here you have a young person, right? Amanda was young at this point in her life, helping out the homeless by delivering them backpacks filled with supplies.
Clearly, Amanda had a very caring soul.
Yes, for dogs, cats, people. Amanda moved out of her parents' home at the age of 20. In 2005, a mutual friend introduced her to her future husband, Lee Antoni. Lee and Amanda moved in together in Calgary and got married a few years later on July 18, 2009. Lee described Amanda as his better half. He told Unsolved Mysteries he fell in love with her personality. He recalled that she always made people smile and feel comfortable.
I believe that.
Well, Lee and Amanda were described as inseparable. They spent most of their time together. Now, like most couples, they did fight every now and then. According to Amanda's brother, Daryl, Lee had a bit of a wild side. Early in the relationship, he partied often.
I think a few of us can be guilty of that.
Well, I know for a fact I was. You know, when my wife and I first got married, almost 30 years ago, I was still in my party days. I didn't really stop that until the kids came along. So there were times where she wasn't real happy with me because I'd call her at 1 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, you're going to have to come get me. I can't drive.
Yeah, I'm sure she'd love that because I know how much she loves her sleep.
And does not like to have it interrupted at all. There were a few occasions where Amanda vented her frustrations about Lee to Daryl. Before she died, Amanda started her own house cleaning business. She was responsible for most of their bills because Lee was in and out of jobs. Amanda was frustrated when Lee was fired from a job. Amanda's brother Alan said he liked Lee, but there were times when Amanda was emotionally hurt by their arguments, which bothered him.
Well, you don't want to see your sister in pain.
No, absolutely. Either physically, emotionally. But, let's go back to this dynamic where you have two people in a relationship and one has trouble keeping a job. That can be a real point of contention.
Oh, absolutely.
Almost as, to the point where, all right, one person's not pulling their weight. The other person is providing most of the money. You could understand why Amanda would be frustrated about that.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have some arguments there. I think in most marriages, in relationships, even if you're not married, I think the top arguments are always going to be around money, which is related to jobs, and then followed up probably by
sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're in agreement there. Are we speaking from personal experience? Maybe. I don't know, but I think a lot of people would agree with that. In 2015, Amanda and Lee went on a trip to San Francisco with Amanda's mother. In October, Amanda and Lee planned to visit Lee's mother in Saskatchewan to help her on the anniversary of her dad's death. They were supposed to leave on the morning of Friday, October 23rd. Amanda had a severe migraine, something she was prone to, and decided to stay home. And I know a lot of people struggle with migraines. Knock on wood, it's something that has never really touched me. I don't have a problem with it.
Right.
But my wife and my youngest daughter do.
Yeah.
To the point where they have to take medication. You and I used to work for someone who had very, very severe migraines.
Yes.
To the point where, she would have to take like the rest of the day off if one came on because she just couldn't function.
Had to lay in the dark and take whatever medication she had to take.
So they can be very, very debilitating. Lee departed around 11 a.m., leaving Amanda home with their dog Ruby and their two cats. It was an 8-hour drive to get to his mom's house. Amanda spoke to her mom Friday and said she wasn't feeling well because she had a migraine. According to her family, Amanda got migraines infrequently, but they were severe when they happened. And that's kind of how, it is with my wife and daughter. It's not like they have them every day, but when they come on, they are real doozies.
It's going to knock them out.
Yeah. Lee called Amanda to check on her once he arrived in Saskatchewan. She told him her migraine was still bad. Lee and Amanda texted back and forth regularly on Friday the 23rd and Saturday the 24th, which you would expect, right? We described this as a couple who were inseparable. They did everything together.
Yeah.
Now they're apart, but you would expect them to be in pretty constant communication, especially via text.
Yeah, I mean, they're separated by an 8-hour drive, but they still want to keep up with each other. And he should, right? He wants to know, how's my wife doing?
Police said that prior to her death, Amanda may have gone to herbalists or pharmacies near her home. Lee called Amanda at 7:06 p.m. on October 24th. This would be their final conversation. Amanda said her migraine was going away and she was feeling better. Their conversation was normal until Lee heard their dog barking. Amanda tried to calm the dog down and yelled, "Shut up, Ruby." Ruby yelped. Lee heard what he described as a crunching sound just before the call cut out at 7:10 p.m. Now, Lee thought maybe Amanda dropped her phone or it died. He assumed he'd get a call back soon. He texted Amanda and waited for a reply, but she never responded. He tried to call Amanda back, but the call went to voicemail. She didn't answer his text that evening. And again, for people who are in very regular communication with each other, that has to be an oddity. And I also want to go back to this crunching sound.
Right.
You know, when you hear that, I think your mind can go in a number of different directions. You know, crunching could be, okay, a phone dropping, could be something mechanical. It could also be the description of bones, stepping on something.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me. But if that would happen to me, I think I'm calling family that lives nearby.
Someone
Somebody.
to go over and check on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an 8-hour drive. That's a long drive.
Right.
For something that you're not sure about right at the moment. But when you don't get the call back, you don't get the response on the text, I'm with you. I think I'm calling somebody who's close to say, hey, I don't know what's going on. I'm 8 hours away. Can you go over and check on Amanda?
Right.
In his interview with Unsolved Mysteries, Lee explained his thoughts at the time, saying, so I'm like, well, maybe she's busy. She'll call me later. Because you don't think of the worst. You never do think of the worst, especially if stuff like this has never happened to you. And I understand that thought. Most people don't think of the worst right off the bat. Now, you do have to take it in the context of, you know, him describing it as this crunching sound. If there's no sound, then does it become even less of a worry? But when you add in the crunching sound, maybe there's a little bit more worry sooner than there would be.
I think so. When you talk about how the dog went from barking to yelping, the crunch sound, and then the phone going dead, and then
no response
for hours. At that point, I would be like, okay, because I would think if somebody hung up the phone on me by accident or something happened to their phone, that they would try to find a way to get a hold of me too. Like, hey, don't worry about me. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. Here's what happened.
Yeah.
But when that doesn't occur,
especially for two people, like I said, who were said to be inseparable in constant communication, you know, if you think about a phone dying, okay, you can plug a phone in, charge it a little bit, at least send a text or make a call and say, hey, just want to let you know, I'm okay. My phone died. It's charging. So for me, yeah, I don't know that I would think the worst right off the bat, but that night, as the hours go by and I don't hear from my loved one, I am going to start to get more and more worried.
Well, knowing you would be in your truck on the way back home.
Yeah, probably. Now, he is 8 hours away. Lee decided that he'd get up early the next morning and surprise Amanda by coming home. He left Saskatchewan at 8:30. on Monday, October 26th, only stopping for gas. He arrived in Calgary around 3:45 p.m. Lee unlocked the front door to enter the house. He didn't immediately see Amanda. He let Ruby out the back door into their fenced yard because she had to use the bathroom. The dog and the cats had no food or water in their bowls. There was dog urine on the floor. Amanda's purse and keys were still on the dining room table. Lee saw that a dining room chair was tipped over, and Amanda's cell phone was on the floor nearby. The phone was broken, and the screen was cracked. So we talked about, the level of worry, the level of concern. I think at this point, it has to start, going through the roof. The dogs peed all over the house. Well, why is that? Why has nobody been letting the dog out?
Right.
He finds the phone. There's a chair tipped over. The phone's broken. Screen is cracked. The dog and cats have no food and water. I'm going to start freaking out.
Yeah, and in your head, you have to be thinking, oh, that was the sound I heard, the crack. It was the phone.
Lee searched the entire house, but Amanda was nowhere to be found. The only place he hadn't looked yet was the basement. Amanda didn't go down there often because she said it gave her a creepy kind of feeling.
Some basements do that.
It depends on what kind of basement you have.
Yeah.
Especially those, they're not fully furnished.
Yeah.
If you just have like an older house with a basement that is nothing's ever been done to it. Okay, that's scary movie type basement.
Yeah. Got like the old cellar feel to it.
Yeah, a little bit of an Amityville horror type basement feel, Conjuring, something like that. Those are the ones that I'm not crazy about. My basement, I love.
Well, you ought to. You're in it like majority of your day.
18 hours a day.
Yeah.
But, it's got carpet and all that. It's not real spooky down here.
No.
Lee turned on the light in the basement stairway. He walked down the first 4 steps and then saw Amanda in the middle of the basement, covered in blood. There was blood all over the basement floor. It had also splattered onto the walls. Lee called out Amanda's name. She didn't respond, so he ran upstairs to call 911. The operator asked him to go downstairs to see if she was still alive. When he touched Amanda, she was cold. And obviously I've never been in that situation. I don't know how many people have. I can only imagine that it would be, one of the most heartbreaking, rough situations you could encounter.
I feel like it would be an out-of-body experience, too.
Finding a loved one, in a situation where they're hurt.
Right.
But then leaning down, touching them, and they're cold. And I think that leaves no doubt, right, that they are no longer alive. Sergeant Trent Peterson of the Calgary Police Service was one of the first officers at the scene. He told Unsolved Mysteries, "This was the bloodiest scene I'd ever walked in on. Quite frankly, it was gruesome." First responders made the decision to call the police after assessing the situation as suspicious. Retired Detective Dave Sweet was one of the lead investigators. He told CBC that Amanda was found in a position not consistent with a natural passing.
Well, that's going to raise some concerns.
Yeah, I think so. Now, what does that mean? Not consistent with a natural passing. What's a natural passing? Obviously, it's not a homicide.
Right.
But what if you fell down the stairs? An accident. Is that a natural passing? That term's a little vague to me.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Outside of, dying in your bed in the middle of the night, what is a natural passing?
Yeah, how do you
or
determine that?
Having a heart attack or something like that. But when somebody says there was blood everywhere, it was a gruesome scene. I mean, the first thing that goes off in my head is that consistent with an accidental fall? It doesn't sound like it. Now, I'm sure you can have quite a bit of blood in some accidental falls. I don't know, just kind of the way that he painted this scene, to me, seemed like maybe there was a little more to it.
Yeah, and as I think we get into the details, it's going to be kind of obvious why he came up with that conclusion.
Yeah, because it was said that Amanda had a significant injury to the right portion of her face. There were bruises on her body that made it look like she was beaten. Her pants had been pulled down just past her buttocks, suggesting the possibility that she was sexually assaulted. Investigators saw a broken ceramic piggy bank on a ledge above the basement stairs. Amanda had pieces of ceramic embedded in her forehead. Okay, so now let's dissect some of these points. And I think we're getting a little bit clearer picture of what they mean by not a natural passing. Because this doesn't seem to be an accidental fall down the stairs, at least from the details we have.
Right.
Now, is it possible that the piggy bank is dropped and the ceramic pieces go down the stairs as she's tumbling? They get embedded in her head? Maybe. It sounds more like somebody hit her in the head with it.
It sure does.
And I'm sure that's what police were thinking as well.
And then how does her pants get pulled down?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe you could explain some of the bruises, maybe even the injury to her face with a fall down the stairs. Could the fall actually pull her pants down? Possibly.
Maybe.
But I don't think that's what they were thinking. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states. To police, Amanda's death didn't appear to be a robbery gone wrong. Nothing was missing from the house, and there were no signs of forced entry. Police declared Amanda's death very suspicious, and the homicide unit led the investigation. And I don't know how you could call it anything other than that. You know, as we've talked about, does the possibility exist that, some of these details could be explained by a fall down the stairs? Yeah, possibly. But I don't know if it could account for all of these things.
Seems unlikely.
Amanda's autopsy determined her cause of death was blunt force trauma. She bled to death. As a result of that injury, she had no brain trauma and no broken bones. Aside from a broken right orbital bone, she had bruises on her elbows, knees, and hips.
Well, I mean, maybe the person, let's assume a person did this to her.
Yeah.
Maybe they pushed her down the steps, which caused some of the injuries, and then they finished it off at the bottom of the steps.
Now, see, I was thinking the other way around, that she was hit with this piggy bank, maybe at the top of the steps, and then pushed down the stairs.
That could have been happened. Very well could have happened too.
So I think there's a couple of possibilities. You would think in a really bad tumble, you would be likely to break a bone, arm,
you would think,
leg, something.
But some people
go limp, and then people talk about that like in car crashes,
right? Where
if you tense up versus being very relaxed, your one way results in more injuries than the other.
Well, that's why you've heard some stories about how a drunk driver or a driver that was impaired
doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, they walk away unscathed.
Yeah, where someone else dies. Yeah. The autopsy placed Amanda's time of death around 7 p.m. on October 24th. Shortly after she spoke to Lee, there was no activity on Amanda's phone after the 7 p.m. phone call. So now what this does is it does kind of line up with Lee's account, right? He's on the phone with her. All of a sudden he hears this crunching sound, which now you would think is either the phone or the ceramic piggy bank. And then the phone goes dead.
Yeah.
And then she dies shortly after that. Forensic investigators conducted a detailed search of the house. The doors were dusted for prints, but no stranger's prints were found in the house. And prints are always an interesting thing to me. We talked about prints quite a bit on True Crime All the Time this week, and it turned out that, the perpetrator always wore gloves. So he wasn't going to leave behind any prints. So there again, it's that kind of theory that the absence of something, to me, doesn't mean quite as much as the presence of something, especially when it comes to fingerprints, because somebody could just be wearing gloves.
That's true.
And therefore they're not going to leave any prints behind. Sergeant Jody Arns, a bloodstain pattern analyst, analyzed the bloodstains in the basement. Drag marks showed where Amanda's body moved from one spot to another, suggesting a struggle. There were 12 impressions in the blood. Most of them appeared to have been made by a foot rather than a hand. What stood out the most to investigators were 2 footprint impressions facing up the stairs. The toes were close to the base of the stairs, but the prints never went up the stairs. Investigators confirmed these were Amanda's footprints.
So they're saying it looked like she made an attempt to try to go back upstairs, but never got close enough to do that.
Yeah, she got to the base of the stairs is what it sounds like, but couldn't actually make the first stair because there's no footprint on the actual stair itself, just 2 footprints facing the base of it. And my thought is she obviously had to have already been bleeding to leave the footprint impressions in blood. It would also explain probably why she wasn't able to accomplish that, because she's hurt very badly.
Didn't have the strength or the
capacity to make it up there. Amanda's slippers were also at the base of the stairs, but there were no shoe impressions in the blood, only barefoot ones. There were swipe marks back and forth in the blood, almost as if someone was covering up shoe marks, per Sergeant Jody Arns. Blood droplets were also found in the basement. Investigators hoped these were accidentally left behind by the killer. If they were injured during the struggle, swabs were taken and sent to the lab for testing. So, I think, when you look at everything we know so far, the investigators, I think they have to be taking this as someone entered the home, attacked Amanda. There's even a thought that they may have left their footprints in the blood, but then, tried to cover them up by swiping the blood back and forth. Now, did they leave the house and then Amanda was able to get to her feet, but ultimately collapsed? Or did she get to her feet and then someone knocked her back down or finished her off? I don't know. There's a lot of questions here.
It's very bizarre. Could you make the argument that she fell down the basement and got back up, turned herself around as if she was going to go back up the stairs, but couldn't because she didn't have the strength, and yet found herself in the middle of the basement and fell down and died?
So you're saying accidentally fell down?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can make an argument, but then you have to explain some of these things, right? The piggy bank. Why is the ceramic embedded in her forehead?
Yeah, how did that happen? How did she get it in her head?
Yeah, you have to answer that question. To me, it seems more likely that maybe she was hit with it. Could that also explain the orbital fracture? Or did she suffer that, falling down the stairs? A lot of questions to answer. Lee was one of the first people questioned. He denied having anything to do with Amanda's death and was distraught over the loss of his wife. He provided his alibi, that he was with his mother over the weekend. He mentioned that it wasn't typical for them to spend an entire weekend apart. Now, we've been talking a lot lately about the mother alibi. And what does that mean, right? How reliable is it? Is it possible a mother would lie for her son? I think here, this is a little different because he is said to have been 8 hours away. Now, was he really 8 hours away? You would think that cell phone data, right, would be able to clear that up pretty easily, putting him 8 hours from home at the time that she was killed.
With cell phone data and the mom's statement, and, you know, if he put any gas in his car or went anywhere and used a card or something,
sure,
that should secure his alibi.
Yeah. I mean, that would be much different than just mom saying he was home with me all night and there's nothing else to support that.
Yeah.
The police also spoke to Amanda's family. Her brother, Daryl Hogg, was asked if he ever got any bad vibes from Lee. Allen told the police he had some concerns about Lee. He said in his recorded interview, "I think he loves her, but I don't 100% trust him." Allen also said, "I'm not, saying that he did it, but I think he's very impulsive. He could be with his rage." Okay, so, Amanda's brother comes in and says, "I don't completely trust him, and I think maybe he could have done it. He's got rage issues."
Right.
I think that's going to not do anything to allay suspicion, on the part of the police against Lee. If anything, it's just going to peak it a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's going to help them decide they need to continue their focus on him.
2 investigators traveled Lee's route from Calgary to his mother's house in Saskatchewan and collected video from gas stations he said he had been at. This video confirmed Lee was in Saskatchewan at the time Amanda died. So that's exactly what we were talking about, right? You have his mom giving him an alibi, but now you have confirmation of it as well. And I think now it's really solid.
Yeah.
At least as it pertains to him not being the killer.
Yeah, but could he have hired someone?
Yeah, and police did consider that possibility, right? That Lee hired someone to kill Amanda, but there was no evidence that would suggest Lee was in contact with someone else or that he made any kind of arrangement to have Amanda killed. Investigators found no evidence of domestic violence in the marriage. Lee also had no motive to kill his wife. So he was officially ruled out as a suspect.
I feel like that would just be such a rough thing to go through. When you're innocent, you're innocent, but others question if you're innocent. And what does that do for your grieving? Can you really grieve fully?
I don't know how you could. It's almost like you'd have to put it on pause almost because you're dealing with this other stuff that could be your life potentially. Let's face it, right? The husband, the significant other, the wife, they're always going to be looked at. They have to be ruled out.
They do.
He has some things in his favor. Obviously, he has the fact that it's confirmed he's 8 hours away.
Right.
At the time Amanda died. And then he also has the fact that they can't find a motive. And so no motive, that always jumps out at me. Could there always be a motive that police just don't know about, right? You want out of the marriage, but you don't want to give up half of your stuff. I don't know how much stuff he had because he was in and out of jobs and she was the breadwinner.
Yeah. But you could have a motive.
Yeah, you could. I'm assuming there weren't some big life insurance policies, things like that. It doesn't sound like he would benefit from her death. If anything, it sounds like she was supporting him more than he was supporting her, at least financially.
Right. You think when he was cleared, you think it still had a strain on his relationship with his one brother-in-law?
Well, at the time, did he know what his brother-in-law had told the police? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of a strain it would have because it's not like what his brother-in-law said is what led them to look at Lee. They were going to look at him regardless.
That's true.
So I don't know. I guess it would come down to, each individual person. Lee told Unsolved Mysteries he was never worried during the investigation because the police were doing their job. Next, the police looked into the possibility that a stranger killed Amanda. Amanda and Lee lived in a neighborhood called Castle Ridge, which had a higher crime rate than other neighborhoods in Calgary. Neighbor Marcy Munford told Unsolved Mysteries, it's just not a good neighborhood. There was crime constantly with break-ins, shootings, physical attacks, and assaults were constant. There was always police cars.
I don't get a warm and fuzzy feeling about this neighborhood.
No, it sounds like a place that I wouldn't want to live. Now, some people, a lot of people are forced to maybe live in a neighborhood that is a little less desirable than they would like for it to be based on their financial situation, right? That happens to a lot of us, especially when we're younger.
Yeah.
When you don't have any money, when you're barely making it, you can't live in the best neighborhood in town.
No.
Maybe you can when you're 50 years old and, you've been working for 30 years and you've built something up, but
got to start somewhere.
Yeah. Most kids starting out, they got to live where they can afford to live. And that's not always the best neighborhood. There was an alley outside Lee and Amanda's fenced-in backyard. Strangers sometimes entered their backyard to steal bottles and cans. They sometimes left the back fence open, and Lee and Amanda could see their shoe prints in the snow. This was something that concerned them. I can tell you right now, it'd be something that would concern me. Now, I'm also wondering why they're stealing bottles and cans. I can only assume that either Canada or that part of Canada had a bottle return system.
They do.
Like some places here in the U.S. do, where you can get a nickel or a dime for every bottle or can that you return.
They actually have a pretty good one up there.
I know. I remember when I lived in Detroit, they had that. We don't have that here in Ohio, but in Detroit, Michigan, if you bought a 12-pack, you were keeping all those cans because you were getting, you were paying more up front. So you wanted that money back when you were done drinking the pops.
And I know in Canada, at least in the Ontario area, you take those cans, the bottles or whatever, back to the beer place you bought the beer from, and they would give you credit for those against the beer you just purchased.
So why are you strictly dealing with beer? That's very telling.
No comment.
I went to pop, but you go straight to beer. Okay. We see what your drinking habits are. Another possibility that was considered was a stalker who took advantage of Lee being gone. Police canvassed the neighborhood and learned about suspicious activity. On the evening of October 24th, one couple heard Amanda's dog barking loudly. Around 6:30 to 7 p.m., neighbor Amanda Gurney described it as a scary dog bark, like, get out of here, dog bark. Then we heard like a yell coming from Amanda's house. The neighbor to the right of the Gurneys saw someone running through the Gurneys' yard. Lee noted that Ruby only barked if there was cause. She would have barked if someone entered their house. He also noted that Amanda would have fought with an intruder.
So, knowing that, when you're on the phone with your wife and you hear your dog bark and then yelp and then the phone make a crack noise, in hindsight, I wonder if he wishes that he would have called somebody immediately to do like a welfare check or something like that.
Oh, I'm sure he does. No doubt. I still think, again, hindsight's 2020, right? It's easy to look back.
Yeah.
But I still think if I was in that situation, I would have called somebody and just say, hey, I don't know what's going on, but something doesn't seem right. I'm not blaming him.
No, not at all.
But I think if I was in that position, I probably would have done that.
Yeah. I mean, believe me, it's easy for me to say that sitting here, not actually going through that experience.
Sure.
And he even said that, right? And unless you actually went through something like that, you don't know what you would do.
And we mentioned it earlier, right? There were no signs of forced entry. So it's possible someone got in through the back door, which opened out into the yard. Lee couldn't recall if the door was locked when he arrived home and let the dog out. He told Unsolved Mysteries, what beats me up every day is that back door. I cannot stop thinking about that back door, if it was locked or unlocked, because I just automatically grabbed the knob, opened the door, let the dog out. And I think, going back to Lee, I think there's going to be a lot of things that, he can't stop thinking about. What ifs? Or, did this happen? Did that happen? Police looked into whether Amanda was having an affair and the possibility that that person came over while Lee was gone and harmed her. Lee noticed that Amanda was wearing a fancier pair of undergarment or underwear outside of the casual sets of underwear that she would wear throughout the week, according to Detective Dave Sweet.
Well, maybe she just didn't have her normal stuff clean and decided to put on something a little more fancier.
Yeah, this theory was pretty quickly dismissed because there just wasn't any evidence that Amanda was having an affair.
I mean, sometimes I'll wear my nicer underwear on the weekends just because.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The lacy ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've described them. It's not my favorite conversation over dinner, but I've heard about them.
They're just very airy.
Mm-hmm. Because there's not much to them. But Lee also pointed to a potential suspect during his interviews, and it turned out to be his own sister. The police held a meeting with Lee and Amanda's family, where Lee said, "I think my sister had something to do with this." According to Daryl Hogg, Lee said in a recorded interview with the police, "My sister hated my wife." Lee called child services on his sister because she was using drugs. The child was taken away. His sister was angry at both he and Amanda. At one point, his sister called him every day, sometimes up to 20 times a day, asking where her daughter was. She had also made threats to Amanda.
Okay, well, sounds like we might have a motive.
Definitely have a motive. If she really was on drugs, then maybe you have someone who, under the influence, isn't thinking clearly or is filled with rage, even more so than they would normally be.
But, I was saying, wonder how his relationship with his brother-in-law was after all that. Wonder how his relationship with his sister was.
Yeah,
all this.
Probably not as good.
Yeah.
The one with the brother-in-law, I think you could smooth that one over. I don't know if you can smooth over throwing your sister under the bus as a potential suspect in your wife's murder. Now, I don't think their relationship was all that good anyway.
Right.
So I don't know that it mattered to him, but Lee's sister was brought in for questioning, but there was no evidence to suggest she was responsible for Amanda's death. In early December 2015, the Calgary police announced they were seeking the public's help for answers in Amanda's death. Police could only say her death was suspicious, with signs of violence in the home, but they had no motive, no suspects, and no answers. And, that's a kind of a tough place to be if you're investigators.
Sure is.
No motive, no suspects, no answers. Lee broke his silence and spoke to the media for the first time, saying, "All I really want is my wife back. I miss her every day, every minute, every second. We are just lost for words. We just want closure. My life has been changed upside down." He also said, "I wish I could invent something that would get animals to speak, because if Ruby could speak right now, everything would be solved, because she was there. Also, Gizmo the cat was there."
Yeah, that'd be great if you could find a pet whisperer that could actually interpret what the animal saw, and it'd probably solve a lot of crimes.
Oh, yeah. If you had somebody that could commune with animals, yeah, I think you could solve crimes. You could also make quite a bit of money.
That's true.
Just as being maybe the only person ever who could talk to animals.
Could you call yourself, I don't know, Dr. Doolittle?
You probably could.
Yeah.
I don't know that you would. But on December 7th, 2015, the police received additional test results. There was cannabis in Amanda's system, but this was consistent with Lee's statement that she may have used it for migraine relief. The DNA results were surprising. Only Amanda's DNA was found in the basement, and she had not been sexually assaulted. There were no other fingerprints, palm prints, or footprints in the basement besides Amanda's.
So now you really have to start thinking, what the hell happened?
And was anyone else involved? Or was this some type of, terrible, tragic accident?
Some freak accident that occurred.
Investigators contacted behavioral science experts to get more opinions. When they examined the case, they suggested Amanda's death may be an accident. So, we mentioned it from the very beginning, right? This case gives off a little bit of a staircase vibe, right? You have a wife who is found dead at the bottom of the stairs. Now, in one, the husband's convicted. In this one, the husband's looked at, but his alibi checks out, and they eventually rule him out.
Yeah.
But they shared this similarity. There are a lot of people, in the case of Michael Peterson, Kathleen Peterson's death, that think it's possible, her death was a tragic accident.
They do. But you still have to answer all those questions, right?
Yeah, in both cases you do.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think in the case of Kathleen's, they were a little harder to answer. Detective Dave Sweet decided to go back through the entire case file. He noted that there were no fingerprints found on the piggy bank. There was also dust on top of it, as if it had never been picked up. In fact, there was no evidence to suggest the piggy bank ever left the ledge above the basement stairs. So this raised the question, did Amanda hit the piggy bank as she fell? And, that's kind of what we went over a little bit. This ceramic piggy bank and the ceramic bits embedded in her head. Well, how did they get there? Did somebody smash her in the head with it? Now they're saying, okay, is it possible that when she fell, she actually hit it? The police hired a biomechanics engineer who found that although very rare for a woman of Amanda's age, the type of injuries she suffered were consistent in the literature for accidental stair falls. So I think this just even further supported the possibility that Amanda struck the piggy bank as she fell. Investigators also knew that the piggy bank was driven into the wall based on a small divot in the drywall.
Well, that helps tell a story there, right? Enough force pushed it into the drywall.
Yeah, and either it was already there, but I think Lee probably would have been able to speak to that, or it was caused when, she hit it on the way down. There was also the question of whether Amanda possibly could have been tripped up by one of her animals.
Well, that definitely can happen. We've all been around enough animals, how they can get underneath your feet, and next thing you know, you're taking a little tumble.
Yeah, I think it's happened to a lot of us pet owners. According to Detective Dave Sweet, what nobody can ever say with 100% certainty is that did she fall down the stairs or could somebody have pushed her down those stairs? He noted several pieces of evidence that work against the accident theory, such as the undisturbed laundry basket at the top of the basement stairs. He questions how the piggy bank wasn't knocked off the ledge. If Amanda hit it hard enough to break it, he also questions why Amanda's phone was 8 to 10 feet from the stairs.
Well, could there have been some kind of weird thing with the dog and the cat? And, she drops her phone while she's trying to keep the dog and cat from hurting each other. And then next thing you know, somehow she falls, trips, whatever, down the basement stairs. Her phone's left upstairs. She's downstairs. You can probably run so many different scenarios.
Yeah, but these are all good questions, right? That the detective is posing. If you have this piggy bank sitting on a ledge, and as you start to fall down the stairs, your head hits it, breaking the piggy bank, embedding some of the ceramic in your head.
Yeah.
Does the piggy bank just kind of sit there on the ledge? Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
You think it would go down the stairs with her.
I think, but stranger things, right?
On December 13, 2016, Amanda's death was declared an accident. Experts concluded she likely died from falling down the stairs. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, and no definitive evidence of another person in the house. Authorities never reached a full consensus on the official ruling. Amanda's family also expressed their doubts. Lee told Unsolved Mysteries, "If I didn't see what I saw, and they would have told me that she fell down the stairs, I would have believed them. But because I found Amanda in the basement and what I saw, it didn't add up." Bloodstain analyst Sergeant Jody Arnn said her gut reaction to the news was, no way. She was beaten. She had never seen that amount of blood at an accident scene. And I think, that is very telling. We had somebody say this was, one of the bloodiest scenes they'd ever been to.
Right. Yeah. The first responder.
Now, I get it. Head wounds can bleed a lot. But I do think you have to look at what a bloodstain expert, an analyst has to say.
Yeah.
I mean, it's what they do day in, day out.
Right.
And, this woman is saying that there is no way this resulted from an accidental fall. Amanda was beaten. So I think it's just one of the many questions, right, left unanswered in this case. And unfortunately, there are quite a few. Amanda didn't die immediately. It took a period of time for her to lose blood. Based on the footprint impressions, Amanda spent time moving around at points, standing and walking. If she made it to the bottom of the basement stairs, why did she not at least try to walk back up? And I think there are answers to that question, or possible answers, right? Her thinking could have been affected by blood loss, or whoever injured her was still in the house and she felt safer in the basement than going back upstairs, or that person wouldn't let her go back upstairs.
Yeah, true.
I think another mystery that has been brought up by many is why Amanda's animals never went down into the basement over this 48-hour period. There wasn't a single paw print found in the basement.
And to me, that's really surprising, knowing that she had a dog and a cat. I can understand maybe not the cat, but the dog. I'm really surprised that her dog didn't go down there.
Yeah, because how many videos have you seen of someone, getting hurt and the dog immediately goes to them and they can sense that something's wrong.
Yeah.
There are stories of, someone dying and the dog literally sitting on them, waiting for them to wake up.
Right.
Lee noted that if he or Amanda were ever hurt or crying, Ruby would come up to them to comfort them. The Calgary police hoped working with Unsolved Mysteries would generate new developments in the case. Amanda's case is currently inactive until new information is received. Investigators acknowledge that the accident theory cannot fully explain all the details at the scene. Amanda's manner of death remains undetermined. Anyone with information about Amanda's death is asked to contact police by calling 403-266-1234. Tips can also be submitted anonymously to Crime Stoppers through 1-800-222-8477 at www.calgarycrimestoppers.org or via the app P3 Tips. So, Gibbs, as we wrap this one up, it is an extremely mysterious case. Yeah, I want to go back to a neighbor seeing someone running through another neighbor's yard.
Yeah.
Who's that? You'd love to know the answer to that question. And I think, investigators said it well, right? The accident theory doesn't fully explain all the details, but the stranger intruder theory doesn't really either. I think that's part of the mystery of this one.
I hope we get some answers one day. I really do. If we don't, it's probably going to lend more to the fact that it was just a freak accident.
Well, if it was a freak accident, I don't know how you're ever going to quote unquote solve that.
Yeah.
There is nobody to come forward to give information. I do see a scenario where, she does get tripped up by the dog or the cat or a combination of both, falls down the stairs. She's disoriented. She tries to get up, but can't make it up the stairs, falls back down and dies.
Yeah.
But, like we said, there are some details that don't quite fit. Doesn't mean that it couldn't happen that way. They just don't quite line up with what you would expect. I am leaning heavily on this bloodstain expert / analyst,
right,
who's saying there is no way this is an accident. This woman was beaten. And then you have this mysterious person running through the yard at a time that you would think it would kind of be, after Amanda was killed.
Yeah.
So I just don't know what to make of it. But I think that's why it's so mysterious and why people latch on to a case like this.
Yeah. Well, hopefully he gets some answers. He deserves those, I still wonder, about the potential suspect, person of interest, whatever you want to call it, that wandered through maybe the yard, maybe found their way in through the door, caused some type of argument or something that maybe pushed her down the stairs and then freaked out and left, and she was left down there to bleed out.
Mm-hmm.
I know they really don't have anything on Lee's sister. So I think, as the police said, she's in the clear. So it comes down to...
I don't know if she's in the clear. They just don't have anything on her.
Yeah. Well, she's in the clear for now then.
Yeah. I mean, could she have hired somebody to do it?
Maybe.
That's possible. I am really going back to the dogs and cats. If they had access to the basement, it's very hard for me to believe that at the very least, Ruby didn't go down there. Yeah. And you would have known that she was down there because she would have walked through the blood and left paw prints.
Unless, like some dogs and cats, spooky places freak them out. They won't venture into those areas.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Or they already knew something was wrong with her and didn't want to see her dead. Maybe they knew. Maybe the dog and the cat could tell.
Hey, I don't know. Dogs and cats are smart, man. I don't put anything past them, but
yeah.
There's just a lot of things in this case that they're hard to explain because nobody knows the answers. That's the hard part. But that's it for our episode on the death of Amanda Antoni. We got a voicemail, Gibbs. You want to check that out?
Let's hear it.
Hey, boys. Long-time listener. Listening to the Caleb Berg episode right now. And the wife and I got a real good laugh at your enunciation of Antigo. It's Anago. We have a lot of names that get mispronounced here in Wisconsin. So I'm up in Sturgeon Bay. So, yeah. Thanks for all you guys do. You really bring a fun spin to things in the sense of dark things that need light to them, but bring them sensibly. So keep your eyes open and your head on a swivel. Thanks, guys. Bye. Hey, guys. Sorry, I just left a message about Caleb Berg. I don't know if I said my name. I'm Fez on your Patreon. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, appreciate you calling in. Definitely. Thanks for the support on Patreon. Shocking that I would mess up a city name.
And I probably told you at least 3 times.
I'm sure you did.
This is how you say it.
Oh, it's funny how that never comes through.
Well, you edit it out.
To the listeners.
I try to help.
No, some names are just said or pronounced differently than they look or you would think. And I'm going to mess some of them up. There's just no way around it.
Well, look, I have tried to tell you that you can't just get by with the old hook on phonics.
Did you just call it hook on phonics?
Yeah, I did.
Because I believe it was hooked on phonics.
That's what somebody would say that didn't take the hook on phonics class.
Yeah, I think you got the discounted hook on phonics, and it didn't work that great.
Well, being Mensa, you get 20% off. So.
On something that is a lesser product than the actual hooked on phonics.
Yes.
But no, we appreciate the voicemail very much. All right, buddy, that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
September, CBS hits are streaming free on Pluto TV.
I'm coming in hot.
For this month only, you can watch full seasons of the CBS shows you love. From the courtroom drama of Matlock to the heroics of Fire Country. Go back to where it all began in NCIS Origins, or watch the hilarious hauntings of ghosts. All for free. Full seasons of the CBS shows you love. This month only on Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.